everyone, we are Group 5. Our title is Conditional and Biconditional Analysis. Theme: diving into the concept of conditional and biconditional statements. Objectives: to understand the similarities and differences of conditional and biconditional statement. To apply conditional and biconditional in the real-world situation. Overviewing the context of conditional and biconditional statements. Conditional statement. A conditional statement is a logical statement that contains two parts, which are the hypothesis, an if clause, and a conclusion, and then a clause. This is a statement asserts that if the hypothesis is true, then the conclusion must be also true. It is written in the form that if P then Q, where the P is the hypothesis and the Q is the conclusion. Denoted into if P then Q equals P then Q. Situational example: if you ask me, then I'll drive you to a shore. Components: hypothesis or P, the initial statement or condition; conclusion or Q, the result of consequence inferred from the hypothesis.
Good day everybody, my name is Shimas Makaskas. Now let me take you to the types of conditional statements. We have here the direct condition, which represented by F, Q, then P. This is the most straightforward form that leads the hypothesis directly to the conclusion. Example: if it rains, then the ground will be wet. The next one, we have the converse, which represented by F, Q, then P. This form reverses the hypothesis and the conclusion. Like for example, if the ground is wet, then it has rained. See how the hypothesis and the conclusion change different position in the sentence. Next, we have the inverse, which represented by if not P, then not Q. This type is the negation of both the hypothesis and the conclusion. For example, if it did not rain, then the ground is not wet. Notice that the word not has replaced inversely the direct condition statement example. And the last type of the conditional statement is the contrapositive, which represented by if not Q, then not P. This type converts the inverse, negating both the conclusion and the hypothesis. For an instance, if the ground is not wet, then it did not rain. The first phrase changes into the conclusion and then adding the hypothesis, which also added the word not in both conclusion and the hypothesis. Now here is the truth table of the biconditional statement. The P is the antecedent and the Q is the consequent. In this table, the condition is only false if the antecedent is true and the consequent is false.
Good morning. I am Marlon Hanijane L. So, biconditional statement is a logical statement and a mutual relationship between the two conditions. So here in our presentation, the symbolic is the phrase denoted by if and only if, a biconditional statement. P if only if Q, when P and Q are statements. So in our example, a number is even if and only if it is divisible by 2. It means the both condition is divisibility by 2 and vice versa. So in our third table, the symbolic for P and if only Q, if it P is true, the Q must be true. If the P is false, the Q must be false. If its Q is false, the P must be false. So it implies if the truth of one condition is the truth of one another and vice versa.
Good morning everyone, I am Kim J. Inasara and I am a presenter from Group 5. And now we're going to talk about symbolism beyond words, exploring symbolic arguments. So, welcome to Symbolism Beyond Words, exploring symbolic arguments. This report delves into intriguing realm of symbolic arguments, where abstract representations transcend the limitations of language. In this exploration, we will unravel the significance of symbols in conveying complex ideas, understanding their role in various disciplines, and uncovering the nuanced layers of meaning by bringing to communication. Join us in a journey that goes beyond conventional linguistic expressions, unlock the power of symbols, and shape and enhance our understanding of the world around us. Here's the theme of our topic: knowledge into the concepts of analyzing odd propositions and conclusions through arguments. Here's our learning objectives. To understand what is symbolic arguments and how can you apply them in real life situations. To understand what is argument and define what is propositions or premise and conclusions. And to know how to identify and analyzing arguments is valid or invalid. So, what is symbolic argument? A symbolic argument typically involves using symbols or abstract representations to convey logical relationships or proportions. It's a form of argumentation where symbols represent variables, concepts, or elements, allowing for a more concise and format expressions of ideas, often used in fields like mathematics or logic. So here's a simple example about this. So RP is a person is a father and RQ is a person is a male. The implication of Q if P then Q is used to express a logical relationship. In this case, it suggests that a person is a father, then the person is male. This is based on a general understanding that fathers are typically male. The logical connections help us draw conclusions about the relationship between being a father and being a male. Thank you, and that could be all.
Argument, premises, and conclusion. The word argument is not used the sense that two or more people disagree with each other. Rather, argument is used in the sense of trying to make a convincing case that something must be trusted through using ideas of logic. Argument, premises, and conclusions. The everyday notions of an argument is that it's used to convince us to believe something. An argument informed with two components, a set of premise and conclusion. The thing that we are being encouraged to believe is the conclusions, while the premise or the statement of a supporting evidence for the conclusion that we want to make.
Hello everyone, my name is Christian J. Medico and I will be presenting about a valid and invalid argument. So in symbolic arguments, an argument is valid if the conclusion necessarily follows from a given set of premises, or the conclusion is true and also the premises are true. So second, if an argument is invalid or fallacy, if the conclusion does not necessarily follow or the conclusion and some premises are false. So in identifying if the argument is invalid or valid, make sure to ask a question. If the premises are true, would be locked into accepting the conclusion. If the answer is yes, the argument is valid. If the answer is no, then the argument is invalid. So there are some examples of symbolic arguments. So first example, premise 1 is all humans are mortal. Second premise is Socrates is a human. So conclusion is therefore Socrates is a mortal. So in this argument, it is result as valid because the conclusion is necessarily true based on the premises. Additionally, the symbolic form is P then Q. Example 2, premise 1, all fruits are healthy. Premise 2, spinach is healthy. Conclusion, therefore, spinach is a fruit. This argument is invalid because despite the premise that all fruits are healthy and spinach being healthy, it doesn't logically lead to the conclusion that spinach is a fruit. Spinach is a vegetable, not a fruit. So the conclusion doesn't logically follow from the premises. Additionally, the symbolic form is P then Q.